is all about finishing your quilt with the gallery facing. I like doing this because it gives your quilt a contemporary, clean look. I put a gallery finish on all my art quilts because I think it prepares them to hang in any environment. Gallery, exhibit, a show, my home, other people's homes. So this mini quilt is what I have been working on. It was pieced but not finished for years. So it was time to get it done. This is an example of the treasure hunting that I like to do inside images of really pretty gems that I find. So this gemstone, this lovely octagon, is it an octagon? I think it's an octagon. Yeah, 8 sides. Was so pretty, so interesting. I loved everything about it. And so what I ended up doing was diving into this little area over here on the right, flipping it around so that it was, those little red repeating triangles were pointing skyward. And I loved that. It looked very architectural to me. And so I made a quilt out of it. And so this is the quilt on the side that I needed to finish. I actually quilted it this morning so I could face it for you this afternoon. And then get the quilt, this presentation done for you about, I got it done maybe 15 minutes ago. So let's see how it goes. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to trim the raw edges to the desired finished size of your quilt. Then what you're going to do is cut 4 2-inch strips, the length of the sides plus 4 inches. And this is going to give you an overhang of 2 inches on either side of the quilt edge. Once you have your facing strips cut, what I do is I take them to my ironing board and I turn up and iron along one of the edges of each, not of each quilt, I'm sorry, but that should be each strip by 1/4 inch. So I turn up 1/4 inch and iron along one of the edges of each of the facing strips. And you can see what they look like over here. Does that make sense? You're just going to do it on one side, not both, just one side. Next, lay the unfolded edge of the facing strip along the edge of the front of your quilt. So you can see right here, the unfolded edge of the strip is along the edge of my quilt. You can see here's where the little folded edge is. And what you're going to do next is mark each end of the strip in 2 places for a total of 4 marks. You're going to do one mark right here at the edge of your quilt and one 1/4 inch from the edge. Okay, so you're going to do this on this edge and you're going to do it on the other edge. So you'll have 4 little marks. Okay, then pin the strip to the quilt, placing a pin in the mark 1/4 inch inside the edge of the quilt. So you can see I've got this edge, this is facing strip lined up, pinned, but you can see I've got a pin in that inside mark that I made. That outside mark is delineates the edge of the quilt. The inside mark is 1/4 inch in. So then I'm going to stitch the strip to the quilt, starting and ending at the 1/4 inch mark. Once you've got that, and you can see how I've got this stitched on there, I'm going to pull back the end of the strip I just sewed to the quilt so that it's completely out of the way of the second strip you're about to sew to the adjacent side. You're going to get that out of the way. Once I pull back the edge of the strip, then I'm going to sew the next strip to the adjacent side, again starting and stopping 1/4 inch from the edges. And the 2 strips should meet up at the edges and overlap. Do you see where they meet up here at the edge? But they don't overlap. They just touch. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of fine tuning of that. I have to peek and then maybe take another stitch or 2 and then peek. And sometimes I have to rip out if I've gone over it. But again, they should match up perfectly at that little edge. Then fold each strip over itself to create a 45-degree angle to the corner point of the quilt. I fold it down, I finger press it, or you can iron it, and you create a crease. And that crease will serve as the guide over which you'll pin, and you're going to then sew along that crease to get your mitered corner. Okay.
You had a question as to whether or not you're supposed to backstitch at the 1/4 inch mark.
I do. Then what you're going to do is you're going to bring the 2 folded edges of the quilt together so that the creased folds align. So again, the top edge here is you're going to pull those together. And what that does is then I try to pull the quilt away right over here to the right-hand side, away from the strips to get it out of the way of the pins. And then I'm going to pin along this crease line. All right. So then you're going to go ahead and drop that under your needle and sew from the folded edge of the strip to the corner. So boom, we're going to start here and you're going to sew to the corner. But what you need to do is turn back the quilt edges away right here from the stitch line, because if you're like me, you're likely to grab the edge of it on the back side like I just did. I love my ripper. This picture also shows where I just clipped the ends off. You see where these little these scraggly edges are? These normally would have been longer edges, like the 2-inch overhang. I just clipped it to be parallel with that mitered seam line right there. So that's a step that I forgot to put in there. You can just slice that stuff right off. So what I did to fix this is I just took my ripper and I just pulled out 1 or 2 little stitches right here. And then I stitched from the other direction. I put it under my machine from the corner and stitched to the folded edge, and grabbed that corner and made sure everything was out from underneath it. So I had to kind of wiggle it around a little bit. Then you can remove the bulky fabric in the corner. Right here, the dog ears. First of all, you're going to take that edge off. Then you're going to do the dog ears from the strips. You're going to clip this little corner of the fabric sandwich at an angle across. You're not going to hit the seam, but you're going to just snip it across. I know you guys know how to do this. And then you're going to taper the edges right here down to the corner. You're going to start here and you're going to taper it down to the corner, just reducing all the bulk that you possibly can. What you do then is you turn the quilt to the front and you're going to iron the facing strip away from the quilt top. Please don't think that I iron on my cutting mat. I don't. This was staged, just a prop. So you take your iron and you fold that facing strip away from the quilt top so you get this nice edge. You won't be able to get all the way to the corner because of this little envelope, this little pocket formed by the mitered edge, but close is good enough. Okay, then you're going to, from the front side of the quilt, with the facing strip pressed away from the quilt top. Do you see the quilt top's on the left, the facing strip is on the right? You're going to place a line of stitching just a needle width or so in the facing strip. This is a tailor's trick to help you turn the facing. Okay, you're not going to see it from the front side, but you'll see it from the back side, and it really helps you turn that facing. You see how you're going to grab the seam allowance too. And that's what does the trick. So you go through that seam allowance and the facing. Okay, so then you'll turn the facing to the back of the quilt and gently push the corner to a point, or a so-called point. I have a little work to do on my point there. You're going to turn the quilt to the back and work the facing to the back with just a smidge of the quilt top showing at the edge. Do you see how the quilt top is just showing there? And I'm pulling it back. You can see my miter corner here. And I'm going to pin the edges in place. Here's a peek at what it's going to look like in the front. And then you'll hand stitch the folded edge of the facing to the quilt. You've already got your hem there. And now you can just do a whip stitch all the way around. And congratulations, that's how you put a gallery facing on a quilt.